Alright guys, welcome to another edition of Learn How with Pacific Angler. My name is Jordan Simpson, and today I'll be teaching you guys how to tie one of my favorite sculpin patterns. It's a pretty generic pattern, a little more involved, but not necessarily difficult. It uses a composite loop, more or less. So that's the most involved part, in all honesty. Other than that, it's a pretty simple fly, with the exception of the composite loop, but even that isn't too difficult. So follow along and we'll get tying. Now, first thing you'll see in the vise here is the Gamakatsu B10S. That's just the hook I'm using. It's not the only hook for this fly. You can use really any wide gap streamer hook that you prefer. Match the size and of course the strength of the wire to whatever your target species is, and you'll be good to go. First thing I want to do is I'm going to lay down a thread base here. I want to be using hot pink just as a thread base. We're going to use a couple different colors, but first I'm just going to start behind the eye of the hook, and then I'm just going to go, and I'm not going to do too detailed of a wrap. You can see I've got some spacing in between, not too concerned. It's going to get covered up anyways, and I don't find it too necessary to have a perfect thread base when you're never going to see it, and it doesn't actually have any effect on the fly. Anyways, we got a thread base. Next step is tying in our Marabou tail. We got some white marabou here. I'm just going to pinch off clumps off the side and gather the ends and then cut them off. And there we go. Put a nice clump of marabou for the tail. We're going to tie that in on top of the hook shank there. And for a length, I'm going more or less about the length of the shank itself. Trim the excess. Bind down the tag ends with your thread. There we go. Next step is to cover all of that, the shank at least, with some pearl mylar tubing. Different colors, different sizes. I'm using a small here. You can use really any color you'd like to match any bait fish you might make, but I like the color white on most of the systems I fish, so I'm going with pearl with the white. One little trick, a lot of people always try tying it in and they just start it like that, and they try to wrap the thread and gather it, and it never really looks nice. One little trick is to simply cut a slot just down the length of it. And that allows your thread to actually go in between, so you can actually gather the material itself. The little excess that hangs over, all it does is flare out, add a little bit to the tail. There we go. That's bound down. Just gonna whip finish over that. I'm only doing 3 or so. It doesn't have to be anything crazy because you're gonna seal it off anyways. That hot pink just, I find, acts as a little hot spot, a little target point. Now I'm going to take my UV resin. I'm using Solarez, the medium viscosity. You can really use any of the products that are out there. And if you don't have resins, edge cement works too. I just find it takes too long to dry when I'm trying to complete a fly, especially when I'm using glues at various points. So add a little bit of resin work in there. Doesn't have to be anything perfect, but sealing it off. Quick flash. You can really see that UV hot pink shines through. Adds a bit of a lateral scale, adds a bit of color. Next step I'm going to do is just cut the tubing to size. I actually want to cut it back to about here. I'm actually just going to score it all the way around. And then you see where you can score it, you can go in with it. It cleans off a lot nicer. You might ask, why don't I just pre-cut lengths? The reason being is that I've never been able to get it completely accurate for every single time I tie it, so I cut it to size as I need it. Starting with our white thread now. I'm going to start it just anywhere really in front, because it's going to cover up the pink anyways in front of your tie-in point. That's why I'm not too concerned about a neat thread base on patterns like this. Now I'm just going to take it down and start to gather the mylar. There we go. The next step is to take the rabbit strip. I want to measure it out so it finishes just right where my thread dam is there. A little bump, I want to tie it in there. So I'm going to sort of try to line it up, visually looking at where the bend of the hook goes, where it would go into the rabbit hide. Line it up. I'm sorry, I blocked you out there, but I'm just going to pierce it onto the hook. There you go. Slide that down and around. Get back inside. There we go. A little trick here, I think I've shown you this in other patterns before, but a lot of times I'll actually start my thread quite well behind the tag end of the rabbit. And the reason being why I like to do that is that to pull it nice and tight, I will use debarbing pliers to pull tight. And if you pull and lift, you can really pull down tight and get nice clean ends when you're cutting it. There you go. Got my excess tag in the rabbit. Open that up there. I'm going to dip my hands in some water. Tease that rabbit back. I might ask why I leaned away to get water. Don't keep water on the tying desk with all my materials out. I've knocked it over before. Not a good time. Next step is to tie in our rubber legs. I'm using olive to contrast with the white. Got 2 legs. Overall, complete fold in half, get 4 pieces per side. Take your legs, cut them in half. Take one set, fold it around the thread, and tie in. Repeat on the other side. Fold around the thread, find where I want to place it, lock her down, tie her in. Now all I'll do is gather them. And trim them to the length I want. I got some fins, I got some feelers, some movement. Next step here, guys, is to add our composite loop. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my composite loop, and to do that I'm going to take my thread, take my finger, and build a dubbing loop. Now to build our composite loop, we're going to use a couple different materials. We're going to use 2 different colored ice dubs. I'm using ice dub UV hot orange and ice dub peacock. I think peacock. Those 2 there. I'm doing orange first at the top of the loop, followed by peacock underneath with a blend of Ozark turkey farther down, lined up in this world. You'll see what I mean when I put the composite loop into the loop. I've pre-built one, and I'll show it to you guys now. If you guys can see that, I've got ice dub in 2 different colors, a layer of Ozark turkey on the back 2/3, because I want my first third wrap to be plain orange for the gills. And then it's followed by a secondary thin layer of the same colors over top to sandwich it in. I'm going to put all that material into a dubbing clip to put into my dubbing loop. Alright guys, I put that all into my material clip here. And for me, I'm just going to trim the edges here. I don't want so much excess. So I'm just going to trim it off into my waste basket here. Alright guys, I've trimmed a nice neat flush edge. Just plain orange, orange with Ozark turkey, peacock with Ozark turkey. Put that into my material clip, into my dubbing loop. Just slide it off. I'm gonna let it go. Next step I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start to sort of poke it so I'm more like 33/66 in terms of the ratio and how much on edge side to side of the thread loop there. Don't want too thick of a core in the middle when I'm wrapping it, so I'm going to try to make it as close as I can to the thread that will still lock when I spin it. Alright, composite loop, a mini composite loop inside. I'm going to pinch off just below. I'm going to give it a good whirl. I'm going to slowly start to pull back on it and down while I slowly release tension on the thread. Spun out. It looks pretty tight. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my dubbing needle right now and I'm going to pick it out. Use a bodkin or dubbing needle, crochet needle. And you'll see that it's going to actually start to brush out. Pick from all sides. I'm always really careful that when I'm working on turkey, I don't want to pull it out. So if I see it, I will gently tease it out like I just did there. And see, it's really not that hard of a fly. Just detailed. Alright, move my thread forward. I'm going to start my first wrap, and as I go to wrap it, I'm just going to palm right backwards. I'll try to pre-fold it if I can almost. Just to help with its shape as I wrap it. Alright, so you can see that I've got the first bump of orange complete. Nice close tight stacked wraps. And then I'm going to go into where the Ozark turkey starts. I am doing super tight stacked wraps. Teasing that Ozark backwards. Alright. So it's all done. It looks pretty gnarly right now, but we're going to tie it off. We're going to clean it up. Alright, so now that's all cleaned up, there we've wrapped it. What we're going to do is we're going to slowly and gently pick it out using the same bodkin or dubbing needle. Just be careful, just work it out slowly. You don't want to pull out the Ozark turkey. Another trick with this is that when you start to get to the underside, okay, this fly will ride upside down, hook point up. is to be careful to not tease apart the mylar tubing that is underneath along the back portion of the fly right there. Oh, I almost did that there. I almost did exactly what I said not to do. Alright, you got a crazy mess right now. That's okay. Now one thing I want to do is push all that back. Sometimes you'll feel it slide back. Yeah, there it went. And all I'm going to do now is pull it backwards. And see me actually tie it down pretty tight. Now people ask, like, why did I do that? Why is it so bulky? It doesn't really matter. I'm literally just going to tie in some eyes, do one more loop, and it's done. So what I'm going to do is take my large mono eyes, tie it in on the top of the hook. And one step here you can do if you want to clean it off is you can use a lighter just to carefully burn off any fuzzies. Large mono eyes. I'm going to tie in just on top of the hook. And some guys like to tie in the eyes first. You can do whatever you like, but I find sometimes if you tie in the eyes first and you're not up to par on your proportions, you get in a jam. So I'll sometimes tie in the eyes a little later on, especially if I know I'm using a lot of material. There we go. Next step, almost done, is in a rabbit loop. So you could use cross-cut rabbit straight off the hide, but it's very bulky. I'm going to take it, work my thread just back behind the eye, build a second loop. Doesn't have to be anything crazy long. Form your loop, and then bring your thread back to just in front or behind the eye. Loop. Gonna have it hanging ready. Next step is to take my crosscut rabbit. I'm using chinchilla color. I don't know why they just don't give you chinchilla hide for chinchilla color. But here is my crosscut rabbit in chinchilla. You can see I've gone light to orange, which is darker, getting darker. And then do a mask of gray with white tips on it. You'll see when it's done, it blends really nice. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my rabbit, I'll put it into my material clip. I'm just going to trim off the hide. Hide trimmed off. Into the loop. Again, I'm just gonna slide it closer so I don't have to build up more thread. It's pretty good there. And again, I don't want too thick of a core. I'm just gonna push that rabbit pretty close to the thread. Alrighty. Again, pinch and spin. Take my needle to hold my other materials up all the way while all this spins out. If you don't, it gets all gathered up, makes a mess. Here's my nice rabbit brush, gonna pick that out. and wet my hands. Actually, I've really slicked everything back. Now I'm going to start wrapping my next collar, palming it up. So I'm going to do a couple of three wraps behind the eyes. Probably fit 2 in, maybe 3. It's easing it back constantly. Looks like I'm going to get maybe 2. I want to crisscross over the eyes. Finish my materials. I'll finish in front of the eyes by a couple wraps. We're almost done, guys. In all honesty, this fly really isn't hard. It's just a little involved. When you get comfortable with it, or you pre-prep all of your composite loops, you pre-prep all your legs, your rabbit strips, it should maybe take 5-10 minutes at the most per fly from start to finish if you're all prepped. So anyways, I've palmered, wrapped, and done the mask or the head. I'm going to use my nails to push materials back, tighten them up against each other. I'll build a nice little thread head. Quick whip finish. And trim. That's it, folks. She's done, but let's pick it out there. There, folks. It's light. Nice profile. It's got translucency. It's not too heavily dressed. It's got enough flash in there without going crazy. The body, because it's a hollow braid, doesn't hold water either. It's literally just a shank underneath that. In that pattern there, like I said, very light, easy to swim, dance, jig around with a heavier sink tip. Lets you walk it and lead it through different structure, boulders, jams. Don't have a name for it, but it is a pattern I do like, and it's one I've used to great success. You can tie it in a multitude of colors, but if I'm going to be on certain river systems that I frequent, white is one of my favorite colors if I don't know what to use. And again, thanks for watching, guys. All these materials here can be found at Pacific Angler. If you have any questions on technique, recipe, thoughts, or design, maybe you've tried it and you want my critique or opinion or some help, come see me at Pacific Angler. My name is Jordan Simpson. Thanks again for watching, guys. Have a good one out there, and tight lines.